Good tidings, everyone. This is Michael Gobier from the Hey, it's Enrico Palazzo Fantasy Baseball Podcast, and you're listening to Pop Goes Your World.
If you haven't already, subscribe on iTunes. And while you're there, please leave us a rating and review.
And now it's time for our feature presentation.
I'm Chris McBrien, and the pop culture from Generation X is everything to me.
And I'm Derek Myers, and I'm here to educate Chris on the great pop culture of today's generation.
Episode 283, movies that were better than the book. Chris McBrien along with Derek Myers, and this is Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations. Now, this week, we're taking a look at movies based on books, but we want to look at movies that were better than the book that they're based on. So we each put together a top 5 list, and we'll get to our list soon enough, as always. But first, what is new in the world of pop culture for you, Derek?
Well, I have a couple of very new picks and a couple of very old picks.
Oh, good.
So
I like
I'm going to
it.
start with the very old.
Okay,
because
cool.
those should be easy to run through. I think I actually mentioned this one on numerous podcasts in the past. I had a chance yet again to watch the movie 12 Angry Men.
You like that movie. You watch that a lot.
I love this movie. I definitely have seen it in the last calendar year. Turner Classic Movies loves this, and they air it all the time. And I think every time I see it in the lineup, I either watch it live or I record it and watch it within a few days. They're in their process of doing 30 days of Oscars, because in the month of May, the month of March rather, they always do that leading up to the Oscars, and they show all these Oscar winners. So 12 Angry Men was on. I had a chance to watch it again. Honestly, I think that movie gets better every time I see it, and I've probably seen it 20 times. It is so good. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're a movie fan and you have not seen 12 Angry Men, please do yourself a favor. Find this movie and watch it. I would be shocked if you don't enjoy it. It is great.
And you're talking about the old one, because didn't it get remade?
They remade it into a TV Showtime movie with Jack Lemmon in the lead role, which honestly, for years has not been available on streamers. Okay. I think there was some legal issues. I think it is now available for rental on one of them, and I'd like to get my hands on it, because honestly, I only ever saw it the one time when it aired originally, and I heard I remember it being quite good, but this first one is just so good. In any case, I had a chance to watch it. It's fantastic.
Cool.
Another classic that I hadn't seen in a long time, again, was on Turner Classic Movies, so I recorded it and had a chance to watch it back. In the Heat of the Night.
Oh, that's a good one too. Oh, nice.
Excellent movie. Had not seen this in probably 5 years, definitely before the pandemic. I've seen it before, but not that recently. Again, really good. It really holds up. It's really well done. The performances are outstanding. And again, it was in a time when they made movies, they really put a lot of time and effort, and everybody gave their all. Like now you get so many crappy movies that come out, they're just pumping them out to make money. Like you watch something like In the Heat of the Night and you're reminded, like there was a time when people took movie making so seriously. Like you didn't just throw crap out there. You made sure that when you put out a movie, it was great. And let me tell you,
they didn't have the special effects that they do today. So they had to rely on performances and direction, and lighting and stuff to make the film great. So I agree with you.
So good. Yeah. So good. Again, if you haven't seen this one in a while, or you've never seen it, it's 12 Angry Men is a 10 out of 10, and The Heat of the Night is probably a 9.5 out of 10. Again, both very strong movies. And then I watched 2 brand new movies. So we've got the Oscars coming up this weekend, and I thought, you know what? I should try and watch at least a couple of the nominees for Best Picture, because I haven't seen very many of them. So I had a chance to watch Killers of the Flower Moon, the Martin Scorsese film.
Oh, how was it?
Leonardo DiCaprio. So I liked it, but you've been hearing all this stuff over the last year about Oppenheimer, and you're like, Oppenheimer's so long, it's 3 hours. Killers of the Flower Moon is 3.5 hours. It is a long movie. I had to watch it in 3 sections, but it actually works as almost like a 3-act play where it's 3 clearly distinct parts to the story. And by actually watching it sort of in those 3 acts, I think I enjoyed it more because I was able to sort of think about what I had watched. And then the next day when I came back and I watched the next part, and the next day I came out and watched the next part, I enjoyed it. It's one of those ones, we did a show just a couple of weeks ago about like movies you only have to see once. I think that's one of those movies I only have to see once. It's I'll boil it down for people who haven't seen it, and this is not really a spoiler. Back in the day, the white man shows up in America and they push the Native Americans from the East Coast to the West Coast as the white people start to colonize and take over, and they try and move the natives to the less favorable parts of America. Well, what do you know? Some of them find some oil and get rich.
Jeez.
Well, Whitey doesn't like that so much, so he moves in and he basically tries to steal the oil money. That's what the movie's all about. And you can pretty much guess how that's going to go, and you'd probably be right. Leonardo DiCaprio is great. The woman who is nominated for best
colonialism
best
sucks. Like, it was so
colonialism
bad.
does suck.
Jeez.
Yeah, the woman that plays his wife, who is native, unfortunately her name escapes me. She's great. She's the favorite to win that award, and I'm sure she's going to. And she is desperately, or not desperately, but she is definitely deserving of it. Robert De Niro, I believe, is nominated for Best Supporting Actor. He's great. Again, in a movie that's 3 hours and 30 minutes, he doesn't have as much screen time as the lead, but he's on screen a lot. And I mean, who are we kidding? Robert De Niro's great. Like he really brings his talent to this movie. I don't think he's going to win that award, but he deserved the nomination. And again, there's a lot of big actors that have small parts in this very long movie. I'm glad I saw it. I'm glad I saw it once. I don't think I ever have to see it again. It's a Scorsese film, so you sort of feel like you have to give it the time and effort, and the message is very important, and it's important that this movie was made, but it's not going to be for everyone. And man, oh man, is it long. So, and then finally, we had a chance to go to the theater and see the brand new release, Dune Part 2.
Oh.
I suspect this will be the biggest movie of 2024. I suspect it will be nominated for Oscars up and down the board this time next year. I think it will probably be the favorite to win everything, very much like Lord of the Rings, Return of the King won all the awards. I think this one's going to do that too. I think it's going to win director. I think it's going to win picture. Maybe not the acting awards, but like all the technical awards. Like if you saw the first Dune and you were blown away by it, like this is 10 times what the first one was. It's basically Empire Strikes Back was to Star Wars as Dune Part 2 is to Dune Part 1. Like this movie is fantastic, but I will minor spoiler
or like
here.
Wrath of Khan.
Well, when I saw the first Dune, I didn't realize that it wasn't a complete story. I watched it. It said Part 1. I'm like, oh, Part 1. And then it ends and you're like, oh, there's more to come, clearly, because the movie sort of ends with a lot of things unresolved. So I went into Dune Part 2 thinking I was going to get a satisfying conclusion. Well, not so much. Apparently, it's going to be a trilogy. I had no idea. So that was my only negative thing about this movie is it's 2.5 hours. And believe me, it flies right by. It does not feel like 2.5 hours. It is a spectacle. You're going to be blown away when you see this on the theater on the big screen. But I was kind of bummed out that I was like, oh, man, I need another movie. Like, it's going to be a couple of years before Part 3 comes out. But, man, Part 2 was very good. And the visuals are unlike anything you've seen in the theater in a long, long time. You definitely do yourself a favor. Pay the $20. Go to see it in an IMAX. Dune Part 2 is fantastic. This is all people are going to be talking about next year come award season is Dune Part 2. It's going to be like just the runaway juggernaut. So those are my movies for this week.
Well, before I get to my pop culture stuff, I want to make a comment, if I may, Derek. Getting old sucks. So let me put things in a bit of a perspective for you. So back in the day when I was in university, we would have these like big keg parties and we would go stair skiing. Like we would put on pairs of skis and literally ski down the stairs of the house. Let's just say alcohol might have been involved. Okay, so they were
some personal injury, I bet.
Yeah, not too much because we were pretty much invincible back then. And then we would go up on the roof, and we would ski off the roof like onto the front lawn or the driveway. So that's when I was young. The other day, I hurt my thumb putting on deodorant. So
is that your dad joke? Because
it should be. I know, so bad. So anyway, getting old really sucks.
Was it a roll-on or a spray?
It was like the stick thing, and I'm like, oh, my thumb hurts. I'm like, oh, jeez, boy, have I fallen.
I think you're deodoranting wrong.
Apparently. I think one good thing about being so old is that I was actually around when the original Star Wars came out. So I saw it in the theater as a 7-year-old kid in 1977, and I collected all the action figures back then. And so recently I've been looking for a stand for my Star Wars figures because I wanted to, just show off to everybody how old I am with all these old toys. So I went on eBay and I was looking for one, like the original sort of gray plastic stand that you could display the 12 original Star Wars figures on. And it was like $700. And so I did some poking around, and around 2008 or so, they came out with a Black Series stand. It was just like the old one, it's just black instead of gray. And it even has that same retro looking backdrop. So anyway, I got it. And I also found a guy on eBay that has like a full set of like the replacement accessories, like the capes and the guns and stuff. So I've got my original 12 Star Wars figures on display now, and man, they look great. So that's what I've been working on. And I wanted to throw this at you. I know usually we do trivia at the end of the show, but I want to put you through your paces early on as well here, Derek. So can you name the original 12 Star Wars action figures?
Oh boy. I think you actually asked me this on one of the things before. I mean, I need a minute. So, I mean, it's all the heroes. It's Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, Han Solo, R2-D2, C-3PO, Chewbacca, Ben Kenobi.
Yep.
That's 7. Darth Vader.
Darth Vader's 8. Stormtrooper's 9.
Jawa.
Jawa's, yep. That's 10.
Sorry, how many are we looking for? 12?
12. 2 more.
Oh, boy. There was that Imperial guy with the gray suit and the black hat. I don't know what he was called. He's like got a black helmet on him.
Yeah, they called him the Death Squad Commander. No idea why they called him that. Like, I don't know why they didn't call him the Death Star Commander, but Death Squad Commander.
The only reason I remember that action figure is that was the only one of my Star Wars action figures that's head broke off, and so my parents used crazy glue to put it back, and his head wouldn't swivel because obviously it was glued on. And for years, that was the only Star Wars action figure I had whose head didn't swivel. So that's the only reason I remember that one. Okay, what else am I missing?
One more.
The Tusken Raider.
Yes, you got the Tusken Raider. So those are the 12. So we got. Nice. So I've got them all on my display, and I'm just so happy. I'm as my wife says, she's like, "You're such a nerd." I'm a nerd, but and also I'm a nerd because of this.
Here's your dad joke of the week.
So I thought, since we're talking about movies based on books, that I'd do a book dad joke for you, Derek. Okay?
Okay.
So, Derek, did you hear about the book that was written about anti-gravity? It's impossible to put down.
Yeah, we should put you down, buddy.
Well, I'm old enough. I'm going to die before the end of the show.
Happy pandemic-versary.
Don't be ridiculous.
Okay, well then, have I got a show for you?
Oh yeah, because I watch that shows so much.
I can't wait for you.
Oh, that's right up your alley.
30 bags of potato chips and 12 bottles of liquor.
So this looks like something that would be up my alley.
I'm doing crappy. How you doing? You're like, I'm doing crappy too.
I want it to end. I want them all to go to jail.
We need to lock you up for telling that joke.
I think that would be best.
All right, so we're doing movies that were better than the book. And generally speaking, I've always thought, when it comes to movies based on books, that the book is always better than the movie. It's the better of the two. What are your thoughts on that, Derek?
Yeah, I mean, that's the traditional way of looking at this, where a book will tend to be, typical sort of what I like to think of as like pulp novels or trashy novels are usually between 300 and 500 pages. Well, it's hard to compress 500 pages of the written word into, let's say, a 2-hour script. So stuff has to get cut out. And most of the time, the reason a 500-page book works so well is the author has trimmed the fat already. And the 500 pages that are in there are all important for some reason. So to take that 500 pages and trim it down to, let's say, the equivalent of, say, 200 pages in order to turn it into a movie script, you have to trim a lot more stuff out. And depending on how that's handled, it can be a disaster. sometimes it's just, that was okay, not great, but sometimes it can really go off the rails, especially when like whole character subplots are removed. Characters themselves are removed from the story, or multiple characters are smushed into one character composite and they have to accomplish a lot of different things. And then you're like, man, why did this movie not work so well? It's like, because you didn't stay true to the book. So I think that's a lot of the reason why that is the general thought in most cases, is the book tends to be better than the movie. But as we're going to talk about tonight, that's not always the case.
True. I feel like when you read a book, you sort of visualize things in your mind, like, you know, the way a house looks or like a character's appearance. And you sort of keep that image in your mind. And then when you go to see it put on screen, it doesn't always appear the way that you had it envisioned in your mind, you know, because obviously the director had their own image of how they saw, you know, the settings and the people, or, you know, or maybe I also, sometimes I feel like reading a book is a bit of a personal experience. Yeah. And watching a movie is like a shared experience. So there's that too.
Let me ask you this. When you read a book, and I mean, I think both of us are probably guilty of not reading as much now as we did when we were younger. And let's blame the internet on that. When you've got everything on screen, it's kind of hard to make time to read when you're like, you have, 5,000 options in front of you on the screen. But when you read a book, fictional book, let's say, and they describe the characters, I know for me, I often try and think of a famous person that fits that description, so that when I'm reading the book, I'm like, oh, okay, that sounds like Tom Cruise. So now for the rest of the book, I know whenever they talk about this character, oh, that's the guy who looks like Tom Cruise, for example. And not always, but for many books, I find for me that especially helps me keep track of who's who when there's a lot of characters interacting. And I don't have to constantly go back when they're like, wait, who was that guy again? So I'm wondering, when you read the book, do you tend to do that as well? Do you sort of think of like real life stand-ins for the characters, or do you just sort of make up a mental image of what you think that character looks like and just go with that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I don't know if I've ever really put any thought into it. I don't think I've ever sort of personified characters in books like to an actor. So I think I would go with the second thing you said, where like I've just kind of thought about what they might look like physically, but no, I've never actually, now that I think of it, read a book and thought, oh, that's Tom Cruise, you know, in that role. No, so no, I've never done that. So
all right,
we're going to talk about the best movies that are better than the book. I want to put you on the spot. Do you think there's any movies? Because I was thinking about this. What's like the worst movie ever based on a book? Like where a movie was so much worse than the book.
Like the book was great. The movie,
like it was like a good book, and then you go see the movie, and you're like, oh my god, this is terrible.
I mean, the first one that springs to my mind is the Da Vinci Code.
I would think of that too. Yeah,
it was for those who are like, the book's got to be 20 years old by now, but I can remember when that book came out, everybody was reading it. Yep. Like literally I can remember being on the public transit reading that book and looking around, and 7 other people were reading it at the same time. Like literally everybody was reading that book. And when they were like, we're turning it into a movie starring Tom Cruise, and we were all like, well, you can just, park a dump truck full of money right up to Tom Hanks's house. Sorry, who did I say? Tom Cruise again? Yeah. Tom Hanks. It's like, you're making a book, you're turning this best-selling book into a movie with Tom Hanks. Yeah, you just give him all the money right now. And then the movie, not only did it not meet these exceptionally high expectations, but it was garbage.
It was sucked.
Awful. Like everybody who was in that should be embarrassed for their part in it. It was one of the, they always say like sometimes an actor will take a movie just for a paycheck. I hope that they took this money thinking this will be great, and then halfway through they went, wow, this is not coming together. Let's just cash these checks. But that's the only one that immediately comes to mind, but I'm sure there are more. What do you think?
And I think that goes back to what I was saying, like reading the Da Vinci Code is a very personal experience. You're trying to piece it together yourself and trying to figure it all out like it's like a puzzle. And the movie just fell flat. A couple other ones that stood out to me: The Great Gatsby, the one from the 70s. Not like, I think they did one recently. It was dumb too. But the one from the 70s.
Robert Redford?
Yeah, with Robert Redford and Mia Farrow. And I think the problem is it was just so poorly cast. So that one was not good. And another one, it's funny, you just mentioned Dune as being like going to be the big movie of this year. But when they first made that into a movie back in 1984, it kind of sucked. So
yeah, the first one was pretty bad.
so that one kind of stood out to me. Now, we don't share our lists, so I don't want to step on your toes here, but before we get into our top 5, I do have an honorable mention. I don't think this will be on your list. If it is, just stop me. But I want to just give a shout out to The Wizard of Oz. Is that on your list?
No.
Okay, so L. Frank Baum obviously wrote the book in like 1900. And I'll be honest, I never read the book. So that's why I just couldn't put it on my list. But I cannot imagine the book being better than the movie. The movie is one of the greatest films in history. So that one kind of stood out to me. But like I say, I couldn't really put it on my list because I never actually read the book itself. But I wanted to give it a little bit of a shout out. Do you have any honorable mentions you want to?
So, yeah, well, yes, I have some honorable mentions, but I have a few other things I want to sort of get into before I jump into the list. So I think you brought up a good point. When I was putting my list together, I tried to look for movies that were based on books that I'd actually read, because I didn't feel that I could adequately say this movie was better than the book if I personally had never read the book, even if the book was universally panned. And an example I'll give you, again, I don't know what's on your list, but I pretty safe bet. The Forrest Gump. Most people love Forrest Gump. It won the Oscar for Best Picture. Speaking of, Tom Hanks again, this is a movie that people really enjoy. Most people, not everybody, but it was very popular when it came out, and it's held up, and it's constantly, watched again and again. From what I read and what I've heard, the book is particularly absurd. So, I mean, obviously most people have seen Forrest Gump and they know it's just, you have this simple man who's in all these like very extraordinary circumstances where he has these brushes with important people from history. Apparently in the book, he stops Martin Luther King from being assassinated at one point, and he goes on the space shuttle at one point. Like, there are these instances that are just so ridiculous that when they made the movie, they're like, look, we can't put these things in here because they're like, it's already going to be hard for people to believe that Forrest Gump met 4 presidents and, had interactions with all these famous people and all this other stuff. So that was one that, as much as I would have loved to put it on my list, because I think it qualifies, I haven't read the book, so I can't. Another one that I want to sort of put out there as like an honorable mention is the movie The Big Short. And the only reason I'm putting it on here as an honorable mention and not on my list is I talked about it literally last week.
Yeah, that's the one you talked about last week.
Yeah. And so again, this is another one where the book by Michael Lewis is like very technical. It's very heavy. It's about the mortgage crisis. It's about investing. It's a lot of financial jargon. And the book is somewhat of a difficult read. And I think this is one of those instances where they were able to really turn it into a movie that was a little challenging to enjoy and absorb, but they did it in a way that made sense. And so just to extend that, I want to also sort of put Moneyball on the honorable mention. We've talked about Moneyball. It's one of the movies that we have reviewed on this podcast, but it's another one where the book was good and the movie was good. So it's on there. But now I want to sort of circle to one other quick topic is, most of the books on my list, I tried to find stories that were good, but the movie was great. But I did find that what I ended up most of the time, as I kept circling back to make my list, is they were books that were already great, and the movie was even greater. Mm-hmm. And so, again, I don't know your list. I don't know if you looked at books.
I would say that's a consistent.
Movies.
That's a consistent.
Yeah, and it was like, so I just sort of want to, before people listen to our lists, like if you're expecting like this book was utter trash and the movie was a masterpiece, I think that we're going to find again that I suspect most of our picks are going to be books that were good and widely accepted as popular, which is why they made them into movies in the first place, and then the movies just knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
So. Yeah,
that's for sure on my list. Are like the books were great, and then I saw the movie. I was like, man, the movie's even better. Like, it's so good.
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple of examples of both of that. The only other thing I have here is I have 2 movies that I think were equally as good as the book, and I just couldn't justify putting either of them on my list. The Martian, starring Matt Damon.
Your boyfriend.
That's the one.
That's one.
Yes. I thought the book was fantastic, and the movie's one of my all-time favorite movies, but I think they're both equally good, so I couldn't justifiably put this on my list. And Fight Club. Again, the book is amazing. The movie's amazing. I don't really think one is better than the other. I think they were equal. So those were both two movies that were considered for my list that I didn't put on the list. And then after I eliminated Forrest Gump, The Big Short, Moneyball, The Martian, and Fight Club, I had to put 5 more movies on the list. So I'm ready to rock and roll.
All right, so let's start with your number 5. What's your number 5 movie that's better than the book?
All right. Movie that was better than book? The greatest story ever told is better than the Bible. No, I'm just kidding. Could you imagine if that was my actual pick?
Man, I get emails when I say some controversial shit on here. That would take the cake.
Yeah. I couldn't find the author of the Bible, so I didn't figure I could put that on the list. But okay, so my real, talk about a letdown after that. My number 5 pick is actually a movie adapted from a comic book graphic novel.
Okay.
And this is 300, written and illustrated by Frank Miller. Came out in 1988, became a movie directed by Zack Snyder in 2006. And this is I don't think you've seen it, but this is a retelling of the, I guess, supposed to be a true story, but it's more of a myth and legend of the 300 Spartans that basically defend Greece against Xerxes as the Persian army tries to invade Greece. And they, it's this black and white comic book that is in the Frank Miller style, which is unlike any other comic book author. He's got his own style, and the comic book essentially becomes like a storyboard. So when movie directors make movies, they often do little illustrations so they can sort of get a sense of how they want to shoot each scene and from what direction, and it helps explain to the people in the movie, like, where do we want you to be and what we're trying to do. The director of this movie, Zack Snyder, essentially just took the comic book and used it as a template for how he wanted to make this movie. And I couldn't believe when I saw this movie how well it was adapted from what was already a very strong and interesting comic book story that was based on this somewhat realistic, somewhat mythological story, and to bring it to life, and just the way that the movie brings a certain style. And with the comic book being black and white, the director of the movie introduces a very muted color palette. So you don't get a black and white movie, but you also don't get a movie that's full of bright primary colors. It's very subdued and muted, and it works so well. And the action sequences are over the top in their very comic book style, very reminiscent of the extremes that you see in the illustrations of comics. But this movie is just, it's great. And it's a lot of eye candy for people who love hot, sexy men in the prime of their life. Like, these actors have never, ever been in as good shape as they were in this film. My wife loves this movie in part because she likes all the eye candy. And but it's just an interesting and fun movie. And the action sequences are great. And the fact that it is able to pull from this graphic novel and essentially transform a paper medium into a visual, moving, theatrical movie video experience is just awesome. So my number 5 pick is 300.
All right, 300 is yours. I'm going to go back a bit. I'm more the Gen X guy. You know me. And the thing is, for the longest time, back in the 80s there, it seemed as though Stephen King books didn't always translate all that well to the big screen. Like, there was a bunch of dogs in there. Speaking of which, there's like Cujo. And movies like Christine and Firestarter, even Pet Sematary, Silver Bullet, Children of the Corn, they were all kind of crappy. But the one guy I felt that always seemed to have a knack for King's material was Rob Reiner. And I think when I look back on it, the best movies that were based on Stephen King novels were those stories that sort of deviated from the horror genre. I don't want to say too much here. I have a funny feeling that one of these might be on your list, but I'm going to go with Stand By Me. So it's based on the short story The Body from Stephen King's The Different Seasons. And that book had 4 short stories. 3 of them were made into movies. And there's no horror in this story. It's about growing up and the friends that you had as kids and how the friendships may not endure physically, but those friends will always be with you. It's just such a great movie. Now, we reviewed it here on the podcast in season 7. I think it's always an accomplishment. I think it's funny. You were talking about the other way, like taking a book and having to like scale it down into a movie. I think it's an interesting thing here because the Rob Reiner had to take a short story and stretch it into a feature film, without filling it with a bunch of fluff. And it's interesting because the film actually digs deeper into some of the themes in the book and explores them further, like, friendship and life and death and growing up. Like, it's all in there. And it's such a great film, especially, us Gen Xers that grew up with it, right? I used to love reading Stephen King when I was a teenager. And I actually read this book before I saw the movie. I read different seasons back in the early 80s. I was probably about 14, so maybe like 1984. And the film came out in 88. So I was familiar with it. And the first time I saw the movie, I was just shocked. I was surprised how good it was. I mean, you could argue there's been better adaptations of Stephen King books, but this one's the best for me. So that's my number 5. So
good pick.
On to your number 4, my friend.
All right. So one of the things that I find is always interesting when you have a book or some sort of work of literature is when they don't try to faithfully adapt word for word what's in the book. That sometimes they'll just take the story and the theme and the elements and come up with some sort of reimagining. Mm-hmm. And in some cases, this is done simply because the book is old and nobody's interested in watching a movie based on a story that took place 20, 40, 60, 80, 100 years ago. They want it set in the here and now. And so my number 4 pick is The Bourne Identity. So the book was written in 1980 by Robert Ludlum. And in 2002, 22 years later, they turned it into a movie. And this also stars, guess who? Matt Damon. Matt Damon. There we go. 2 shout outs for him tonight.
Nice.
So the original book by Robert. So when I heard this was coming into a movie and I saw the trailer and it had my boyfriend Matt Damon in it, I'm like, well, I got to read the book because the book's always better than the movie. So I read the book before the movie came out and I was a little disappointed, in part because the book, being written in 1980, is all about a spy who was working during the Vietnam era. And he was a Vietnam vet and he was doing spy stuff in the 70s. When I read this book in the late 90s, I had a really hard time sort of getting into it and connecting with it. And by the late 90s, we had things like cell phones and email and things like that. Whereas a book that takes place in the 70s, a lot of the spy craft just seemed so old and outdated. When I saw the movie, I was so glad that they updated it. And the movie came out in 2002, and the story was supposed to take place in 2001, 2002. He wasn't a Vietnam vet. He was, he was a more updated character, and the backstory was more recent and made more sense based on what was happening in the world around him at that time. And his skill set was different. He knew how to use computers and things like that because a spy would know how to do that kind of stuff. Whereas with the original book, because of when it was supposed to take place, it made sense for that time frame, but nobody in 2002 is sitting through a book or sitting through a movie based on a book from the 70s where the movie takes place in the 70s, where you're watching all this old spycraft that is just so painful and slow by today's standards. So this is one of those ones where the updated story really elevated the movie, in my opinion. The book was fine. And in its day, it was probably considered great, which is obviously part of the reason they wanted to turn it into a movie. But 20 years later, you had to do something different, and they did. And the director, Doug Liman, did a great job with this one. So this was my number 4 pick, Bourne Identity.
All right. My number 4, I'm going back, as I want to do, to 1987. I'm going with The Princess Bride. And
good pick.
It's a bit of a tough one because the book is so good. But the
really
movie is even better. And once again, Rob Reiner, that guy is like the king of adapting books into movies. Stand By Me, like I mentioned, and he did Misery, and then this, The Princess Bride. And then the movie's very true to the book. But I feel like it's the casting that elevates it, for me at least. So I read the book after I saw the movie. And
Same here.
I cannot help but read the book and envision each actor playing the characters. It's funny you mentioned that earlier, but since I've seen this movie, you read the book and you just see them, doing it. I wonder what it would be like to have read the book first, before the movie came out, Mm-hmm. And then I wonder, like people that had read the book and then saw the movie, I wonder if they were like, oh yeah, that's exactly how I pictured Fezzik or Buttercup or any of those characters. So I went back and read this book to my son when he was little. It is such a magical book. Like, my God, it's good. And I like how the book is told from the perspective of the author. It's kind of the way his father told him the story, right? And the author interjects, with asides throughout the novel. But I love how they adapt this to the screen, because they have Peter Falk reading the book to his grandson. And it just keeps coming back to them throughout the movie. And it just always reminding you, just like the book does, that it's metafiction, right?
Yeah.
But it never wavers from the fact that you're being told this amazing story. But the movie is even just so much better. Like I say, the casting is good. One of the best movie casts I think ever put together. And Rob Reiner just delivers the goods. So I think The Princess Bride is my number 4. So
that's an amazing pick.
Yeah.
Yep.
On to your number 3,
Love
my
it.
friend.
My number 3, so I'm going to lean on what I just talked about the idea of taking an old work and making it new, but we're going to go real old and make it really new. So I'm going with Apocalypse Now, Francis Ford Coppola. The movie came out in 1979. It is based on the book Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad from 1899. So we're talking 80 years difference between the book and the movie. Now, the book, again, is more of a novella. It's like, I think, about 100 pages. I had to read it for school. It's great.
It's a good book, yeah.
The movie is widely considered to be one of the best American films ever made. It's widely considered to be one of, if not the best movie about Vietnam ever made. I don't necessarily share those opinions, but those are the general opinions, and I don't think they're unwarranted. Like, there's a lot of greatness around both the book and the movie. But this is one where, when the book was written in 1899, I'm just looking on the Wikipedia page here, it says the novel is widely regarded as a critique of European colonial rule in Africa. And the river that the character goes down is the Congo River. Right. Whereas in Heart of Darkness, in Apocalypse Now, they sub in Vietnam. And I think that the movie, when it came out in the 70s, there was a lot of what was written in the 1890s that critiqued colonialism, the European colonialism of Africa, where you could just literally pick it up and transport it and drop it right in and say, well, this is about America's role in Vietnam. And so many of the themes worked perfectly. Like, Coppola did a great job of adapting this, but honestly, he didn't really have to change all that much, because a lot of what he was trying to say and what he was trying to do and what he was trying to put out there on the screen was in the original novella. It was just applying to a slightly different subject matter. Instead of being America, it was Europe and it was British colonialism. So it's interesting how the socio-political elements of what was prevalent in the 70s influenced this movie. But so did a novel from 80 years earlier. And this is one of those ones where you have this great book, but the movie just elevates it because it's able to really shine a spotlight and say, this was a problem 80 years ago, and this is still a problem today. We got different people, same problem, similar problem. And the way that he does it, again, this is a masterwork of storytelling. Like, just the way that the movie is shot, it's a masterclass in how to make a movie. And I mean, there's been so much that's been done on this. They did the original movie, then they did the director's cut, the Redux, which is like 4 hours long. They did a documentary called Hearts of Darkness, which is about the making of this movie. There have been books on this. There have been all sorts of stuff about this. Like, this movie, just the Apocalypse Now film, there's so much that's been done about it. It's considered to be such a great movie, and so no list about a movie being better than a book is complete without having this on there. So this is my number 3.
That's a good one. Okay, so my number 3, I'm going with Jurassic Park. So Michael Crichton was one hell of a science fiction writer. Like, I mean, let's think about. He started back in 1969 with the Andromeda Strain, and they made that into a movie in 71. Wasn't a huge success. It had a couple Canadian actors in it. Arthur Hill and Kate Reid were in it. But then Crichton went on to write some screenplays, because he did Westworld with Yul Brynner, and he did Coma. He directed both of those movies too. And then he also wrote and directed Looker with Albert Finney, and he did Runaway with Tom Selleck too. But then he just exploded with Jurassic Park. So I actually read the book after I saw the movie. So, bit backwards. I think a lot of people were probably like that. I don't know. But I got to say, I really liked the book. Like, I thought it was really good. Just the whole idea behind it is kind of brilliant, you know. You get the mosquitoes out of the amber and extract the DNA of the dinosaurs and all that. So really amazing piece of science fiction. But there's a few reasons why the movie's better. So first of all, directed by Steven Spielberg. So there's that.
Can't fault that.
It brings dinosaurs to life, so it's got that. That's pretty cool. And it was one of the first movies to really utilize CGI. And you could argue, I would, that it's still the best use of CGI ever in a movie. Any movie, ever. Even if it's coming. But one other thing, though, if you've ever read the book is really, really violent. Like, the film tones it down a bit, and I think it's to good effect. Because it focuses more on the movie magic of it all. It doesn't rely on this massive bloodfest, you know, to get the point across. Because the thing is, we get it. Bringing dinosaurs back to life is a colossally bad idea. So we're all good. So I just felt that the film was just so much better than the book. And the book is good, you know, as source material. But that's my number 3. So Jurassic Park. On to your number 2.
My experience with Jurassic Park is a little different. I never actually saw Jurassic Park in the theater. It just, for some reason, it never appealed to me. I think because I was at school when it came out. Going to the theater wasn't really something I was doing. My first couple of years when I was at university, I just didn't have the time and money, and we didn't have a really good movie theater near my school. And I eventually read the book like years later. Like, I think before the sequel came out, I thought I should probably figure out what all this is about. So my experience of seeing Jurassic Park has only ever been on video on a home screen. And as a result, I just never felt the wow factor about Jurassic Park that everybody else always has. I mean, I like it, but I don't think it's the masterpiece that everyone's all like, oh my God, this is, you know, behind Schindler's List. This is Steven Spielberg's best movie ever. I'm like, I think that's a bold statement. But personally, I didn't feel it was better than the book. I felt the book was way better. But I can see the argument for that one.
That's okay. It's okay to be wrong. That's not a problem. Yeah. Okay. So what do you got for number 2, my friend?
All right. So I'm flip-flopping between my 1 and 2, and I'm just debating whether to pull an audible. No, I'm just going to stick with the list as it is. My number 2, I'm doing a cheat. I'm doing the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Okay.
So
that's fair.
Tolkien wrote the Lord of the Rings, 1954, 1955, Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, and Return of the Kings. The books are about 500 to 600 pages a pop. And Peter Jackson in 2001, 2002, 2003 put out arguably 3 of the best movies of the last 25 years. This trilogy is fantastic. And we were talking about, you know, computer animation. A lot of what makes this great is its absence of computer animation, and that it's so much of it is practical effects. And it's probably the best example of a fantasy film put on screen where you have elves and orcs and dwarves. And I mean, you don't have dragons per se. Well, you don't have dragons at all, but it's considered like the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit are considered the grandfathers of fantasy fiction. Everything that's come after that has relied in some way and been influenced on the Lord of the Rings and Tolkien's work. This movie is like the absolute best adaptation. And it's one of these ones where I was talking earlier, where when your book is 500, 600 pages, you got to trim some stuff out. Well, yeah, he did trim some stuff out, but he really seems to have left the best pieces of the book to make this movie. And I actually tried reading the books before the movies came out, and I just couldn't do it. But after I watched the first movie, I went back to start reading the books again, and that sort of opened my eyes. After seeing the first movie, it made, in my opinion, it made the book for me more accessible. I was able to dive into it because I had seen the movie. I could visualize a lot of it better. I knew how to pronounce the names. I got a sense of where the book was going. And yeah, there's a ton of stuff in the book that's not in the movies, but I didn't feel that the movies missed the big pieces. The broad strokes were there. The vast majority of what the main characters do was there. Yeah, there were certain things that were tweaked and changed, and some characters were left out. But this is how you adapt a book. And not only that, but I can recall some of the behind the scenes stuff, because when Peter Jackson put these out on DVD, they had these beautiful like 4 DVD volume sets for each movie with tons of behind the scenes footage and making of featurette documentaries. And in some of those, he talked about how when he was pitching this movie, he originally tried to pitch it as a single movie and knew that wouldn't work. So he's like, well, we really want to do it as 2 parts. And because of his passion and enthusiasm and all the work he had put into it, the powers that be said, like, how do you turn 3 books into 2 movies? Like, why don't you just make them into 3 movies? He's like, well, I didn't think you'd give me the money to do that. And he managed to convince them that was the way to go. So I'm glad that everybody came to their senses and opted for 3, because these 3 are fantastic. And as we said, I said earlier when I was talking about Dune, Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, the 3rd part, it won 11 Oscars, including Best Picture. Like, it deserved every accolade that it got. These movies are fantastic. So you can't talk about movies adapted from books being better than the books. And as great as the Lord of the Rings are, there's a little bit of bloat in there. There's a little bit of stuff that you can take out. And Jackson took that crap out, left the best parts. So this is my number 2 pick is this trilogy. Kind of
nice.
a cheat.
And my experience with the books was a little bit different, because I read the books as a teenager before the movies ever came out. So I was familiar with all the material. And you're right, like some of it, like The Two Towers is an uphill climb to read. It's a little difficult. I'm really glad that you went with the Peter Jackson stuff and not the late 70s one with Ralph Bakshi with all the rotoscoping, because they sucked. So no, good pick. Okay, my number 2, I'm going with One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Nice.
Bit of a surprise, maybe. But back in 1962, Ken Casey published what I consider to be one of the greatest American novels of all time. This has to do with the counterculture movement. It's all about the power struggle between the establishment with Nurse Ratched and the rebellious, free-spirited youth of the 60s, which was, McMurphy at the time. And it looks at other themes. There seems like psychiatry and individualism and freedom. And so how does one of the greatest American novels get outdone by its movie adaptation? Well, because this film is one of the top 5 American films ever made. The film obviously stars Jack Nicholson and Louise Fletcher. It won all 5 major Oscars. It won Best Picture, Actor, Actress, Director, and Screenplay. Only the second time that a film had won all 5. It happened one night, won all 5 back in 1934. And then in 1991, Silence of the Lambs did it too, won all 5. Those are the only 3 films in history to do that. And the thing is, the book is a little bit different than the movie, because in the book, the story is told from the perspective of Chief Bromden. He passes himself off as being deaf and mute. In the film, same thing, but the audience doesn't know that he's pretending to be deaf and mute until, 2/3 of the way through the movie. Mm-hmm. The book is amazing, but the movie is even better. Back in season 3 of this podcast, I had Yancey watch this movie, and as a millennial, he'd never seen it. He immediately said it was one of the best films he's ever seen in his life.
Yeah, I remember he was blown away.
Yeah.
I remember listening to that episode back then and thinking, yep.
It's really hard to outdo a monumental book, especially a book like this, because it just represents so much of the counterculture and the opposition to authority and all those hallmarks of the 60s. But this movie does it, so it's even better than the book. So that's my number 2. So I'm really curious to know what your number 1 is.
Well, I don't think it's going to come as any surprise. You sort of teased it earlier inadvertently. And I think a lot of people, when you ask them what is their favorite movie of all time, especially guys of our generation, their answers are usually going to come down to Star Wars, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Pulp Fiction, Godfather, and this one, The Shawshank Redemption.
Oh, yeah.
So
good one.
Based on the book by Stephen King, Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption. It's a short story. I believe it is in that novella.
It's from different seasons.
About the four seasons.
It was from different seasons. It was Hope Springs Eternal. It was the spring.
Yeah. And so again, here's one where you've got a very limited amount of information provided in the form of this short story, which is, I want to say it ran like between 60 and 80 pages. So definitely under 100. Mm-hmm. And you turn it into a movie that runs well over 2 hours. Most people, if you ask them, their top favorite movies, this one almost always makes their top 5 list. Most people I know would put this as their number 1 or number 2. And I'm definitely in there. It's in my top 5, no question, probably in my top 3. I think it's safe to say I've seen The Shawshank Redemption in its entirety 50 times. I've probably seen it in part, probably closer to 100. This movie is great. I love every minute of it. It's just... you can't say enough good things about it. And I think anyone listening to this podcast has seen this movie, so I don't have to waste time explaining what it's all about. But here's another example where the short story was good, but it only had a limited amount of content. And Frank Darabont, I assume working in conjunction with Stephen King, because they're both listed as writer credits in the movie, expanded this out. And how this movie did not win Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Supporting Actor is just a travesty. It's one of those ones where you look back at the Oscars and you go, okay, if we had a chance to redo the Oscars from, I believe this came out in 94.
Yeah,
like this was
Forrest
a big
Gump
movie year.
Yeah.
This was a Forrest Gump year, the Pulp Fiction year, Shawshank. Like there was the competition was pretty steep, especially looking back. This is one of those ones where you sort of go, you know what? In retrospect, maybe we should have done this one a little differently, but it lives on. It wasn't a big box. I mean, as we've talked about before, it wasn't a big box office hit when it came out. It found legs in video. It found legs in cable, and it's just lived on. I think on any given week when I turn on the TV, this is playing on one of the channels, and I watch parts of it every time it's on, even on stupid AMC where they cut stuff out and they bleep things out and they edit the movie in ways that, you know, just are a travesty to make those kind of cuts to such a great film. But this movie's just so good on so many levels, and it's kind of hard. I mean, obviously Star Wars is an original work of art, is an original movie, and Pulp Fiction is an original movie. So, you know, you can't really compare them all. You can't really put those ones on this list because they're not based on books. But yeah, Shawshank, I don't think anyone's going to disagree with this one. It's definitely the best, one of the best movies ever adapted from a book. One of the best movies ever, period. The fact that it's adapted from a book, it supersedes and eclipses the book by like leaps and bounds. Like this has got to be the number one pick, no question. So
that's a great pick. And like I say, I read different seasons, you know, way back when I was like 14. It was like 1984, but long before this came out. Well, not long before, I guess, in my world. Yeah. Long before. And yeah, when I saw this movie, I was like, oh my God, it's so good. It's very true to the source material, but it expands on some, but it captures all of it. And then I'm always blown away because right near the end, after this movie's been going on for like 2 hours, when Andy Dufresne mentions how he sort of dupes the warden and kind of double crosses warden, it's like bang, 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 bang. Oh, everything is like almost in a flashback. Like but it's so good. Oh, yeah. I don't know. Darabont did an amazing job on this. This is a great pick. Great pick.
And it's one of the movies that we haven't done on this show, but I mean, who wants to listen to two guys that love this movie gush for an hour? Mm-hmm. Like what
else can be said about
boring radio, right? And I think most people agree that this is a fantastic movie. So, you know, it's one of those ones that I don't think we're ever going to need to do because there's just, you know, it's boring radio for the two of us to talk about how much we love it.
You're right. It didn't do well when it first came out. And the thing was, I think a lot of it had to do with the title. People were thrown off and they're like, The Shawshank Redemption. What a dumb title. What's that? And meanwhile, the book was called Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption because of the poster. But yeah, I don't know. That's a great pick. I mean, how do I outdo that one? I'm going to do my best. So, okay. My number one, I'm going with Jaws. So nice. Where do I start with this one? I mean, it's tied for my favorite movie of all time. 3-way tie for my movie, as you know. Jaws, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and Star Wars. Can't decide between them. They're all three the best.
And Raiders and Star Wars not based on books, so that's why they're not on your list.
So the thing is, like, the book is amazing. It's so good. But the film is on another level. Like, so some things that the movie has that the book doesn't have. The score, first of all. The cast and Steven Spielberg. You know, so those three things. But there's things that are in the book that weren't in the movie. So in the book, have you ever read the book?
No, I've never read the book. Okay. That's a big part of why I couldn't put this on my list. I mean, I like Jaws, but I never read the book.
The book is good. So, but a couple things happen in the book that they didn't put into the script in the film. Hooper and Ellen Brody have an affair in the book. And that
I think you mentioned that before, yeah.
That's not mentioned in the film at all. And the other thing too is there's a subplot where the mob is like infiltrating the town of Amity and like corrupting the mayor and stuff. And it's kind of touch base on. But just so many things worked for this movie. Like the shark malfunctioning and all that, like just played into how it ended up. Books, I've always felt, are a little bit more scary than the movie because there's nothing scarier than your imagination, right?
True.
You know, the film puts it up on the screen for you, but you know, when you read something, you're thinking about it. It scares you, right? But in this case, the music and what you don't see it sort of plays into your imagination. You know, and that's what makes the film so amazing, because it's what it doesn't show you. Again, it goes back to a lot of things like the shark malfunctioning. That's not the plan. The original plan was to have this shark come out right at the beginning, out of the water, and attack the swimmer there at the beginning. Mm-hmm. But it didn't happen. So it really played into that imagination. So I had the opportunity to take my son to this movie. We went to see it at the big screen at our local theater just last year. My God. It's just a marvel of filmmaking. It's the marvel. I don't know how else to describe it. The book is amazing, but the movie is that much better. One of the best books ever written, I believe. One of the best movies ever made, and the movie tops the book. So that's my number one.
Nice.
Anyway, what do you say on that note that we have some
fun with Caveman?
Okay, Derek, so we're going to play a game that we like to call Pick the Flick. Pick the flick. You get the synopsis, then pick the flick. You get the year, pick the flick. We play this game a lot. Maybe let's just start playing some different games. But in the meantime, we're going to play this game. So what I'm going to do, just like the song says, I'm going to give you the year and the synopsis of the film. You just have to guess the title of the film. And the common thread, all these movies based on books.
Oh, okay.
Pretty easy. I think you're going to fly through this one. Okay.
Hopefully.
I'll try and get some newer ones in there for you too. We'll start with 2009. Okay. Harvard symbologist Robert Langdon works with a nuclear physicist to solve a murder and prevent a terrorist act against the Vatican during one of the most significant events within the church.
I think that was the aforementioned Da Vinci Code.
Gotcha, right off the top. It's Angels and Demons from 2000's Dan Brown book. Okay.
Also a terrible adaptation.
Oh, it was terrible too. It was a crap.
The book was great.
Yeah, the book wasn't bad. Wasn't as good as Da Vinci Code, but it was good. 2011, journalist Mikael Blomkvist is aided in his search for a woman who's been missing for 40 years by young computer hacker Lisbeth Salander.
Well, that was the one I just watched last week. That was the girl with the dragon tattoo.
From Stieg Larsson's 2005 book of the same name. Very good. It was also made into a film in 2009, but that was in Swedish. So I went with the English one. Okay, 2006. A smart but sensible new graduate lands a job as an assistant to Miranda Priestley, the demanding editor-in-chief of a high-fashion magazine.
Oh, was that? I've never seen it, but was that The Devil Wears Prada?
Yes, and it was based on 2003's novel of the same name by Lauren Weisberger. Okay, 2005. 4 best girlfriends hatch a plan to stay connected with one another as their lives start off in different directions. They pass around a pair of secondhand jeans that fits each of their bodies perfectly.
Oh, was that the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants?
Based on the 2001 novel by Anne Brashares. Okay, 2011. An aspiring author during the civil rights movement of the 1960s decides to write a book detailing the African-American maid's point of view on the white families for which they work and the hardships they go through on a daily basis.
Nice. Yeah. This would have made my list if I had read the book. Was this The Help?
It was based on the 2009 novel by Catherine Stockett, same name. Yep. Okay, 1990, stranded on an island, a group of schoolboys degenerate into savagery.
Sorry, the movie was 1990 or the book was 1990?
Movie is 1990. It's Pick the Flick.
Okay, it's got to be the classic Lord of the Flies.
Yes. Based on William Golding's 1954 book.
Golding. I was going to say Goldman. I knew
they made it into a movie back in '63.
Yeah,
Peter Brook did that
black
one.
and white.
And then in 1990, Henry Hook directed this one. Okay, 2009. This movie, the film centers on a young girl who's been murdered and watches over her family and her killer from purgatory. She must weigh her desire for vengeance against her desire for her family to heal.
Is that The Lovely Bones?
Yeah. It is based on the 2002 novel by Anne Sebold.
Never saw it, but I remember that was the gimmick. So
yeah. All right, 2009, Ryan Bingham enjoys living out of a suitcase for his job, traveling around the country, firing people, but finds that lifestyle threatened by the presence of a potential love interest and a new hire presenting a new business model.
Yeah, this was a good movie, actually. This was called Up in the Air.
It was a good movie. It was really good. It was based on...
Reitman was the director, right? Reitman's son?
Yes, it was. It was Reitman's son, and it was based on Walter Kern's 2001 novel. All right, 2008, the story of a man who starts aging backwards with consequences.
Yeah, I can't remember the full title. It's Benjamin Button. It's the something... I don't remember. It's Benjamin Button. I can't remember the rest of it. It's with Brad Pitt.
We'll give it to you. It's The Curious Case of Benjamin Button.
Curious Case.
And it's based on a short story by F. Scott Fitzgerald all the way back from 1922.
Wow. I was going to say it was like The Incredible Benjamin Button, which I knew was wrong. So, yeah.
All right, 2007, years after a plague kills most of humanity and transforms the rest into monsters, the sole survivor in New York City struggles valiantly to find a cure.
Oh, this one's really good. And this is right up my alley with the post-apocalyptic. Is this I Am Legend with Will Smith?
Yes, based on that post-apocalyptic novel by Richard Matheson back in 1954. Okay, 1971. In the future, a sadistic gang leader is imprisoned and volunteers for a conduct aversion experiment, but it doesn't go as planned.
Yeah, this was A Clockwork Orange.
Yes, directed by Kubrick and based on the 1962 novel by Anthony Burgess. And finally, 2004, an elderly man reads to a woman with dementia the story of two young lovers whose romance is threatened by the difference in their respective social classes.
I have no idea.
Apparently, it's a real tearjerker. It's called The Notebook.
That's what The Notebook's about?
Yeah, apparently.
I thought The Notebook had like young hot people on the beach in the rain kissing.
No, I don't think so.
That's all I remember from the trailer. It was about old people reading books.
No.
Wow.
No, but
today
they're reading about two young lovers.
Oh.
An elderly man reads to a woman with dementia the story of the two young lovers. So that's what.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Well, now I'm glad I never saw it. That sounds terrible.
Yeah, I wouldn't watch it either. But anyway, is there something you want us to watch for next time out? What do you think? You got a movie lined up that you want us to watch? What would it be?
I think I mentioned this on a show, a couple of shows in the past. So I want you to go back to way back to the year 2000, which was 24 years ago. That's not
going way back to me.
It's way back for most people. Yeah. Hey, we're going to go back to the year 2000.
I'm so different. Okay, year 2000. What are we doing?
I want you to watch the movie Snatch. Directed and written by Guy Ritchie. It stars Jason Statham and Brad Pitt. And this, I assume, have you ever seen it before?
No, it sounds like something I'd find on Pornhub.
Oh, my.
Well, you might, but I wouldn't do that search at work. No, this is like a caper movie, a gangster movie. It's a lot of fun, a lot of good action. There's a lot of interesting stylistic choices from Guy Ritchie. I want to say this was his second film, and this was sort of his first one where he had like his first movie was Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, and then this was his second movie once he had a little bit of money behind him, and it's really good. And this is Brad Pitt playing sort of an odd, quirky kind of character, which is unlike the kind of things he had done at the time. But I really like this movie, and it was recently on cable a couple of weeks ago, and I had a chance to catch the end of it and thought, you know what, we should go back and rewatch this. So yeah,
all right.
Go watch the movie Snatch from 2000.
I will do that. We will come back next week and we will review that film, Snatch. And until then, I'm Chris McBrien. That's Derek Myers. And we're both thanking you for taking your time to listen to Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations.
Thanks for listening to Pop Goes Your World. You can contact Chris and Derek at popgoesyourworld.com. Please take a minute and review the podcast on iTunes or wherever you download and listen to the show.